You look like a Bob, Randy.
Oh, this is no bad thing. This word cult can have several interpretations. It can be something small and cuddly and slightly eccentric, or it can be something huge and malicious and mad and dangerous. Yeah, I think we know where the COS stands on that spectrum. But isn't it really a business? Let's be honest, it's a business. And couldn't it almost legitimise itself by describing itself as a business?
If it was a business, then it would have to follow labour laws. If it was a business, it would have to pay taxes. If it was a business, people who didn't have a spiritual gap in their lives do that. Now, I'm not saying people have. I mean, if you think about one of the most lovely moments in history for me, or great moments in history, is England in 1940, Britain in 1940. We stood up to Nazi Europe, and I think that's incredibly wonderful. But it was also crazy, and so there was something in our minds. We were listening to Churchill, not completely believing everything he said, but there was something great inside us. The British, supported by the Empire and all those kind of things, all those other people, but nevertheless, there was something which said, we may die, we may all die, we may all lose, but we're going to fight this evil thing. And so there's that altruistic chip which is inside all of us, which isn't a bad thing, it's a good thing. But at the same time, you can take that chip, you can take, I'm using the word chip, maybe it's wrong, you can take that stranded human nature, and if you bend it to your purpose, and it's a dark purpose, and it's a money-grubbing purpose, then that's trouble. So it is both. I mean, like, I was talking a moment ago about Tramontina, the thing in New Mexico. In English, what is an organisation that puts gold in a vault, in a hole in the ground?
Catholic Church.
We call it
Catholic Church. I'm struggling. Not being difficult about it, but you just brushed over the Catholic Church thing, which I have a big hard on about the Catholic Church. I do. I grew up in South London. I've got to go to a confirmation on Sunday. My niece is involved with Irish Catholics. They were lobbing bombs at us. We're looking at a child abuse scandal beyond belief. You brushed over it, John.
Okay, well, yeah, I brushed over it, but to be fair, I'm in East Grinstead, not Rome.
No, John, the issue is organised religion. We talk about cults as a cuddly thing. It's a concept of ridiculousness. It's a ridiculous concept. That's it, in my view. And you just brushed over one of the biggest scandals in the world. The Catholic Church it's like a nuclear bomb compared to a fart, in my view. I could be wrong.
Yes, you're a brave man to say it in this room. I think people might not agree with you.
No, they might not.
But here's the difference, I think, that the Pope has just resigned, the Catholic Pope has just resigned. We don't know why, but there is a sense that the Catholic public opinion matters and bites. Secondly, that there is not enough and not properly, and I am not a Catholic anymore because of my unease. I haven't been a Catholic for years and years and years because of the child abuse scandal. But it's something that the Catholic Church is talking about and is addressing in some measure. Now, maybe not satisfactorily, but there is a problem here, and I don't know how to work out the best way of explaining it. Because I was talking about this earlier, I think, when you weren't here, is that you take the great religions, and I've been rocketed by the Taliban. I've also been to Bosnia and Chechnya, and I have seen Muslims being murdered. I've seen the aftermath of that, and they're being murdered for their religion, and that's wrong too. So there's a problem here, is that I think you've got to accept that people have a right to believe in things you may find bonkers.
Sorry, John, you're just here telling that it's bonkers to believe in the Church and Scientology, and I've nothing to do with them.
There's an e-meter which Marty tested me on, and it was Martin's e-meter that he tested me on, and my needle was floating. But even better was you'd lost the plug.
The charger.
You lost the charger, so you had to go back to St Hill to borrow, or rather buy, a new charger. And he got in there, and it was almost on the way out when OSA hit him. with a "We know who you are."
Yeah, so,
A round of applause for this man, please. Of others of you, I know they've all done crazy things, but that was a good thing. Carry on.
So, the whole sort of landscape has changed a bit since the last panorama. So, will the BBC be more amenable to doing a third one, which will show more about the abuses and so on?
I don't think the problem is, having written a book, I've kind of I don't think the BBC will, but I'd like to make a feature-length documentary about the Church of Scientology.
Because it's been on ABC now and CNN.
Yes.
And, you know.
I tell you what's funny is that in 2007 it felt very lonely, and now it feels kind of crowded. That's okay. I'm not complaining. I also think Wendy wrote a piece. This lady here wrote a piece for Wired in '95, in which at the very end of it she quoted Robert Vaughan Young, who said, "The internet will be Scientology's Vietnam." And absolutely, that's true. There's a wonderful poem. I should have put this in the book, and I forgot to. But there's a wonderful, wonderful poem by W.H. Auden called September the 1st, 1989, and it's an incredibly moving poem, and it's full of melancholy for the war to come, the death to come, and how sad it is, and these ghastly dictators with their pedantic, boring cry, and death and destruction and misery. And yet, even then, September the 1st, 1939, Auden writes about how the just can talk to each other, ironic points of light winking at each other. And I feel that the internet has, more than anything, enabled ordinary people who are thinking about leaving the church or leaving the church or are troubled to communicate with each other. And this is a wonderful, wonderful thing about the internet. All the other rubbish it does this good, great thing. People can talk to each other instantly. And if you're interested in Scientology, if you're interested in the bad stuff, for example, you can look at a BBC reporter going, nuts! He's loud, but actually there's a whole history to this, and then you see the history, and you think, no, they manipulated that man. That's what ex-people say, people used to be in it say. So I do think that the internet has changed the environment. I also think and thank the BBC for sticking by me. There was an interesting moment when it came out, and there was complete silence from BBC management. And it was like that moment when you're the gladiator and the emperor doesn't know what to do, so he's waiting for the plebs. The plebs go like that, I'm out. If they go like that, I'm okay. And everybody went, fuck it.
Why wouldn't they do a third series then?
It would be a third program because they think I just go on about Scientology all the time. This is my friends. They think there are other stories in the world, and the BBC has done two huge ones. The first one got 5 million, the other got 5 million. The counter argument would be, I do get 5 million viewers.
Exactly. If you got like the viewings.
There's another, but there is also, the other thing is that, like Panorama, we were there in 2007, and that feels good. Doing it now almost feels like, the test is that, and there's also an issue about whether I'm impartial, and that is a big BBC thing, but then we're not impartial about good and evil. We're not impartial about free speech issues. We believe, the BBC believes in broadcasting. The second B is a clue, broadcasting. You can't broadcast something that's, we don't believe in keeping secrets. We believe the nation should talk as a nation. I think that's what the BBC thinks. I think it's fair enough for me to say that. I'm just examining my mind about that. So there are issues. It's possible there could be another one, or I could get the money somewhere to do an own feature-length documentary. But I'm in an unusual position in this, but nevertheless, that's there. I also, one other story that I remember, I'm in Pakistan, and we filmed something in the ISI, Pakistani Secret Police don't like, and it's frightening, and there's 5 SUVs, and this guy goes to me and he says, who are you? I'm John Sweeney, and I work for BBC Panorama. And he said, can you prove that? I said, yeah. here's my passport, here's my BBC pass. And he takes it, and he gives it to a man, the man gets into an SUV and drives off into the dust. And then he turns back to me, pitted skin, beautiful English, nice suit. Who are you? And can you prove it? And I turn to him and I say, my name is John Sweeney and I work for BBC Panorama and I have 7 million hits on YouTube. And he goes away and he comes back with my passport and press pass. So I'd like to thank the Church of Scientology and arrest-proof whole fucking planet. Thank you, Church. As far as that's concerned, thank you very much to Church of Scientology. Chap over there.
I do have a question, Tom, but first I'd just like to say thank you very much for taking on the cult. You're probably aware of this, but you are a hero amongst the cricket community, which I am one now. But when the first Panorama programme,
thank you.
You're welcome. I was still in the cult. I was in the cult for about 22 years. I was still nominally in. But when I saw that, I realised that they had obviously pushed you into that, and that was the desired result. And actually, I don't think you've got anything to apologise for at all in that. That really made that programme. It got all the publicity. I don't know if you were aware, but in Scientology, there are actually drills you do where you practice how to upset people and get them angry. So Tommy Davis would have known all that, and you possibly heard this from Mike Rinder, that was the whole point of what he was trying to do, was to get you angry and upset. And I've had this as well myself. I had a confrontation with somebody in the street who was trying to do me, and that's another story. But so they will do that sort of thing deliberately, and they are well trained in that. I mean, unless you've been involved in Scientology, you have no idea how intense they can be, and how, I mean, even myself, I was a member, and I've been in the audience at these fundraising events for the IS, and you've no idea the sort of pressure you're under just to do that. And I sat there before and thought, this is just absolutely insane. And I consider myself quite a dedicated member. The people who saw John exploding probably had a lot of sympathy, but we have no idea how much pressure the church can put on people to do that. But I was just wondering, since obviously that you've had those 2 programs and you've had a book come out, have you had any more obvious harassment from the cult?
No, we had one letter for the book. We had one letter from Carl Rock saying to Hump, who's the man in the dog, who I met in the park, who recognised me. As it happened, Hump's old man was a psychiatrist, and Hump's grandma was a German Jewish psychiatrist. I think both of them were German Jewish psychiatrists. And they wrote the first book called George III and the Mad Business, which said that George III was bonkers because he was a sufferer of porphyry, which was set the way for Alan Bennett's wonderful The Madness of King George. So, if you're doing a book about the Church of Scientology and the publisher is the son and grandson of German Jewish psychiatrists, you can't go wrong with it. But Hump sent Carl Rock a note saying, thanks very much for your letter, the contents of which are noted. And to be honest, I drafted the reply. And since then, nothing. I think the Church of Scientology and Carl Rock and David Miscavige will probably already come to this conclusion. But if they sue me, I will go to court. I will go to court and I will turn up in court. And with me will be people like Mike Rinder, who used to be the spokesman, and Mark Headley and Claire Headley, and Bruce Hines, and 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe some people in this room. And so suddenly it's not me on my own. It is those other people too as well. So there is, it's very, very strange. Tommy Davis at one point, you Tommy Davis, you're Tommy Davis. You did creep me out when you did that. Tommy Davis once said to me, it's in the book, he said, I know where you live. And what's weird about Scientologists, and one of the things that makes me uneasy when Scientologists are attacked so horribly in the internet, is as people rather than as members of an organisation. I'm trying to make a distinction between the two. But all of the ex-Scientologists I've met are bright, intelligent, sweet and good people. Bruce Hines spent 30 years inside, 6 years on a ghastly RPF, is now researching dark matter physics. Mark Headley is a successful businessman and a very bright man. I mean, all of these people, Mark Headley left school at 14, 15 to join the Sea Org. So these are good people who have somehow been lost in something which doesn't, for me, is dark. For me, it's evil. And they're suddenly back. And they are great. They're just fantastic, good people now. And they also have got a great intelligence network. I mean, of all the ghastly secret polices I've bumped into in the world, the ex-Scientology intelligence network is wonderful. Tommy Davis said to me once, "I know where you live." And I now know where Tommy Davis lives. And I'm not going to tell you where he lives, because I don't think that's appropriate, but he lives in Texas somewhere. And it was after I'd been to New Mexico, and I'd grown a beard, and I always looked a bit scruffy, but I was particularly scruffy, and I was covered in my New Mexico space alien cathedral cover. And he lives in a fancy condo there was a guy with a Maserati, he came and tossed the keys to those blokes who park cars in the States in that kind of weird way that we really don't like. And then I turn up, and I've written a novel called Elephant Moon, which I think proves I'm not forbidden, just for the hell of it. That elephant's rescuing orphans in Burma in 1942, never mind that about it. So anyway, I turn up and I say, "I'd like to see Tommy Davis," I believe is in room 42. And the guy in charge thought I was a hobo. Because frankly, I looked shit. And I wasn't allowed into Tommy's apartment. But never mind. Hopefully...
Sorry, did he know you were there?
No.
Okay.
But I left my book, which is... So I left it, so he knows I'm there. I left my book and I said, I wrote in the book my novel, not this book because it wasn't out then. "Dear Tommy, I hope you enjoy Elephant Moon." And then underneath, "Elephants and Freedom." So presumably he put it straight on the fire. One day he might leave. And if he does, I'd like to meet up with him. It's like one of those moments when the chaps in the RAF and the Luftwaffe tried to kill each other all those years ago. Sort of just get drunk and say, "Do you remember when?"
Well, apparently he has left the Sea Org.
He's left the Sea Org and he's left California. He's now in Texas. That's a big movement because in my experience what happens is you make a mental break and then you make a second mental break, and it takes time. It takes maybe 5, 7 years or whatever. And some of it is leaving LRH, and some of it, it takes a step to leave the LRH as a great man and then move on. I feel that people like Mike Rinder and Marty Raffler still believe and value LRH. Now I disagree with them about that, but what's good is that we can talk about all the other stuff and do that. I still think if somebody shoots at me, I'll start saying prayers, Christian prayers, Catholic prayers, or whatever. I don't hold with the Catholic Church because of celibacy, because of the child abuse scandal. So I wouldn't consider myself a Catholic anymore. I'm not sure what I am. Nobody has to know, but I've got a soft spot for the Church of England. I've got to thank my team, Sarah Mole, very, very funny producer, and Sandy Smith, the editor of the programme. They were the two critical people. Sarah was the clever one. But Sandy wrote this wonderful gag, which is at the end of the first 2007 thing, which was the Church of Scientology, if you believe that it does you good, well, good luck to you. But as far as we're concerned, they're not going to be presenting songs of praise anytime soon. What's the time? Do we have 5 more questions? I'll try and answer. Sorry. I might get brainwashed. I'm okay, thank you for that. So, it was good for you. Ask me a question. Man in the bed.
Thank you. Did you invite Charles Henry this evening?
Did I invite Charles Henry this evening? No, I haven't invited Charles Henry, but he is, it doesn't seem that we're great mates. Charles Henry is the MP for the Wealdon And there's no party political thing here. Nick Soames is seems to think I'm a good egg. And the other, to be fair, there were two people who, when I lost my temper, I was in trouble, as it were, and there were two MPs who got in touch with me to say you're okay. And both Tories, it doesn't matter. One was Adam Holloway, who used to be in the SAS, who is a good bloke and has become a bit of a friend of mine. And the other guy, I don't know from Adam, but you might have heard of him, his name is Michael Gove. And whatever you think about his policies on schools or whatever, I may disagree or agree with you. I don't want to make any observation about that. But he said, are you all right, the BBC are being okay. And he wrote a little piece in the Times saying that I'm sorry that Charles Sweeney lost his temper with the Church of Scientology, but as far as I'm concerned, his journalism about stuff is generally brave and true and right. What was good about that was that he was a shadow cabinet minister and he said it out in the open. So that's there. Charles Hendry said in 2005 that the Church of Scientology, basically what was happening, here's the context, is that there was a bill put forward and it was the anti-religious hatred bill. And it was very controversial, and Rowan Atkinson, the comedian, said that this is a foolish bill because it will impinge on free speech. And so Rowan Atkinson, if you remember, was against it. And basically the bill was never made law. It ran out of sand because too many smart people disliked it intensely. But the question then became hot as to what were going to be the exceptions to this fresh shield. You couldn't sort of tell jokes or be rude or hateful or hate speech against the big religions. And somebody put up an amendment to say that the following should be excluded from this new shield to protect religions from hate speech. And I may get this wrong, but the list is something like cannibalism, people who believe in female circumcision, people who believe in human sacrifice, and the Church of Scientology. And up pops Charles Hendry and said it's very unfair on the Church of Scientology. To be fair, he said he didn't know much about the religion, and there's arguments about whether it's a religion or not or whatever, but it is not a cult, because the Independent Television Commission has found it so, said it's not a cult. Scientology is not a cult, he said. The problem is that the Independent Television Commission has got nothing to do with the judgment about whether a thing is a cult or isn't a cult. What it did do was say that the Church of Scientology could advertise on the radio. That doesn't speak to the issue of whether it's a cult or not. Frankly, it's a subjective thing rather than an objective thing. But then he said, I wrote this up in the Independent, I think last summer, and Henry wrote to the Independent and said that I quoted him out of context. To be honest, if you look at the whole argument, he did say that the Church of Scientology is not a cult, and he cited an authority for it which had nothing to do, it had no locus on the decision, and so I don't think he played straight with the elected of the wielding. There's somebody being murdered off camera. So Charles Hendry is the member for Stenhoe West. I'm more than happy, there are lots of electors, or potentially lots of electors here, I'm more than happy to debate this issue with Charles Hendry at any time, in any galaxy, in any time frame universe that's imagined. I will go anywhere to talk to Charles Hendry about the nature of the Church of Scientology. He says it's not a cult. Well, I know people who used to be very senior in it, and there are a lot of people in the room, obviously, who are in it, who do think it's a cult. The problem is that if you live in his constituency and you've got a problem with the Church of Scientology, for example, your kids are in it, if you go to your MP, how confident are you that he's going to truly represent your interests against an aggressive organisation? And I mean, forever with the church, you're left with this strange thing of wanting to say thus far and no further, and also to admit and accept that there's something absurd about it, whatever. And I was, when my kids are grown up now, or rather one's 24, one's 19, but certainly when my son and his mates used to come around, and this is after I'd lost it, with the church, they would read the Scientology books I'd got, and you could see them open on the kitchen table, and I became scared. And Sam, the son, he's into boxing. I find boxing revolting, but father, son, I'm going to do something Dad doesn't like. So he's on a boxing treadmill, and with his mate in the gym, and they're just running or whatever. And then this nutter comes up on the telly, and his mate goes, "Look at that mad bastard." Sam goes, "That's my dad." So if you imagine what I felt when Sam said, "Dad, you couldn't lend me 20 quid because we're all going out for a beer and all that." And I said, "Sam, I'll let you tell Wednesday. I'm not going to give you any bloody money again." And he said, "Well, Dan, I'm thinking about joining the church in South Africa." I would be afraid. That was something I was afraid of. I was afraid of my children joining the church or doing that. Now, to be honest, maybe that wasn't ever going to happen, but it's a fear, and certainly I fear that on behalf of others. Now, people say it's a small thing, but who knows? Right, more questions, so I get on. Tommy Davis.
You mentioned earlier that the church Scientology are very rich, with a lot of money. Where do they get their money from?
What they've done, remember it's been going for 50 years, remember now in the States they don't pay serious tax because it's a religion. In Britain it isn't, in America it is. But when you're in it, they'll suck your money out of you. And if you've got most people now have got property, and that's worth something. So when when your old man dies, your mum dies, or whatever, you give the money from your house. You give your entire family fortune to the church. And people are like, Christianity gave $5 million to the church of Scientology. So there's a constant stream of people who believe their route to emotional, spiritual freedom is through the church. And so that's where they get the money, and they spend it on, for example, private eyes. When we were in the States, at one point I thought I'd been followed around, we thought we'd been followed around by 13 separate private eyes. And they cost around about $750 a day back in 2007, times 13. It's a huge amount of money. The money can come from rock again. And also there are American lawyers and so forth. But now people say, you might say, if you don't, this stuff about space aliens, about the alternative, that's all bonkers. If you maybe people would be nice to switch their phones off, but next time you buy a computer, you can look it on the phone, look up Mesa Huerfanita on your phone. So Mesa is Spanish for mountain, and Huerfanita, Huerfanita. It's in my book, chapter 17, I think. And there's also, if you can't be asked by the book, it's there's a trailer on YouTube. Mesa Huerfanita is a mountain in New Mexico. To the east of that mountain is another mountain with no name, and on it there is a straight line going roughly southwest to northeast, and that is a concrete airstrip, quite long. And then there is a zigzaggy thing, which is a road, in kind of like, it looks like a chalk sign. And then there are two enormous interconnecting circles. And frankly, they look like space alien signs. And I called it a space alien cathedral. And that's true, you will see it. You will see it on, it's nothing to do with me, there's no magic involved. It's there, Mesa Huerfanita. And that is, underneath the mountain, they had stored L. Ron Hubbard's lectures on discs of gold in an argon-sealed vault which can stand a nuclear bomb. So if this isn't space alien cult, what are the space alien scientists doing on top of the desert floor in New Mexico? By the way, I went with Mark Headley, who's an ex-Scientologist, who's written a smashing book called Blown for Good, which I recommend if you're really obsessed with Scientology. And he's a good egg and a very brave man. But he doesn't realise, when we went there, just how bonkers I am. Because I used to be a war reporter, I used to go to awful places. And so we went down the road, and it was really creepy in this crazy gulch, and there was nothing, nobody there, and creepy. And towards the end of this journey, Mark was going, are we sure we should be doing this? Because maybe if somebody shoots us. I'm not suggesting for a second Church of Scientology will want with John Sweeney and Mark Headley. But he said, so we turned back, and then we got fresh directions, and Mark was, but he kind of looked at me, and he realised that actually I'd walk all the way back there because I'm not bonkers. So he gave me a lift, and we got there, and you'll see it on YouTube. It's called the Church of Fear trailer. There's an intercom, and there are two. It's completely weird because there's nothing and nothing and nothing and nothing and nothing, and then bang, there's this 21st century electronic gate with an alphabet lock and two security cameras in the distance watching it howl from 2001. It's creepy and spooky. I hit the button and this voice goes, hello, and I say, hello, it's John Sweeney. I'd like a tour very much of this facility. I'm very polite. What happens is, there's a kind of silence for a bit, and then the machine goes, and I turn to Mark's camera and say, I think that's a church trying to communicate with me. But it's there. Who builds a cathedral in the middle of nowhere? I mean, what kind of, glory to God, yes. Beautiful churches. Winchester Cathedral is my favourite one, but there are so many beautiful churches in the world. Beautiful mosques, beautiful Hindu temples, beautiful Buddhist temples, great synagogues, beautiful synagogue. And I've seen in Budapest, empty virtually people because of the Holocaust. But these are great testaments to the thing that people have in them about worshipping God or a God or something like that. Now you may disagree with that completely, but nevertheless the buildings could be sublime. But to build a secret cathedral with all that money in the middle of fucking nowhere, fucking hell. I mean, the only thing that was weird was that I was going to go there. You think they're weird? Well, I'm weirder. But I do drink beer, so I'm not brainwashed. Next question. There's a nice one over there. Martin Padfield.
That's me.